So this is you guys know that I am waiting for Diablo 4, that I am really excited for Diablo 4. This is a Diablo 4 video. It is kind of long, and since I talk a lot, I am going to put this at 1.5 speed just to speed things up, because I pause and talk a lot. But probably I won't do it here. I will try not to do it. But this is a video by Force Gaming. He makes great videos talking about gaming news, and this is a video about Diablo 4, and I am really excited about Diablo 4, so let's see what he has to say, bro.
Compact, durable wallets designed to help streamline what you carry around. Stay tuned for later in the video to learn more, and check out the link in the description below. Hey everyone, what's up? It's been a minute, but I'm back, and we got a lot of Diablo 4 news. There's actually been a ton of updates over these past several days. Blizzard appears to be going through a bit of a marketing push right now.
And yes, the last week, even this week, we have had a lot of news, brother. Even yesterday, Blizzard posted in the Twitter, Diablo 4 Twitter, they posted a GIF that rotated between a lot of mounts. So we have even took a look at some of the mounts that are going to be available on the game, and that is cool. That is cool. I would probably try to collect them all, as long as you don't have to pay money for them, you know, and maybe do some guides about how to get them.
Now, doing interviews with gaming news websites, what few of those remain, releasing some of their own video and written content, as well as giving select content creators some exclusive early access, which is cool to see. Yeah, we just got a ton of new news and information, and what I've done here is consolidated, wrapped it all up, and hope to put a nice little bow on top of it for you. And yeah, let's just sit back, relax, and let's get right into it. Starting off with Riker, he released a fairly in-depth video detailing Diablo 4's endgame after going hands-on with an early build, making him with the
That video is great, by the way, the Riker video. I watched that video. I thought about watching it on a stream, but it is a 37 minutes of him just talking, and I said, I can't take this video and turn it into a 2-hour affair. I am not going to do that to people, so I just watch it by myself.
the exception of the developers themselves, the only person on the planet who can actually talk about Endgame right now, because everyone else who's played it is under strict NDA, rip to them. He got basically a few days of early time. Blizzard flew him out. He got to play an Endgame build. They gave him an account that had one of each class, and these were at various stages of progression, ranging from levels 45 to 75, because remember, Endgame basically starts as soon as you finish the campaign. So let's start off with Capstone Dungeons. So after completing the campaign...
By the way, in that video, Riker talked about having played... You guys know that I want to play Druid and that I will play Druid. And Riker talked about the werewolf that casts storm abilities. And brother, I want to play that shit. That sounds awesome to me.
This is like the final challenge to progress from one difficulty tier into the next. Specifically, there is a capstone dungeon as you move from World Tier 2 Veteran into World Tier 3 Nightmare, and then another capstone dungeon going from World Tiers 3 to 4, which is Nightmare to Torment, with Torment being the final World Tier difficulty that the game's going to have at release. Now, these capstone dungeons, Riker said, are significantly more difficult than Nightmare dungeons and presented a real challenge. He tried the level 50 capstone dungeon with his level 35 rogue and said it was incredibly difficult. He kept on dying over and over again just to elite packs, and really he just couldn't complete it at first. So he went back, he respected a few...
I like that there is something like that in the game. I don't like when you use screws to stuff like it is no one business and you don't care and you are just, I don't know, scratching your balls while you go through the dungeon. That is stupid. I don't like that. I want the game to be engaging, and I like that there is some I don't know, like challenges in the game that you have to overcome to keep going forward, and capstone dungeons are like that. And we know that there is going to be a Pinnacle Boss at level 100 that is like the most important, the biggest thing you can do in the game. Like, that is when you know you beat the game, is when you beat that dude, if you beat that dude. Because you have to be level 100 to be able to even try to kill that dude. And they have said that not a lot of people will get to level 100. So that is cool to know for someone that wants to go hard, you know.
A few times, upgraded all of his gear, and then after a few tries was finally able to clear it. What's of note, though, is in the capstone dungeons there is a final boss, which is meant to be sort of like a pinnacle challenge for each of the world tiers. It even had some one-shot mechanics, which caused him a bit of trouble, but again, after some finagling and changing things up, he was able to clear it. He then went on to say...
By the way, he mentioned something that is important to know, that endgame starts when you finish the campaign, not at level 100. Some people think that endgame starts at level 100, and no. If you get to level 100, you have been in endgame for over 50 levels. Endgame starts when you finish the campaign. That people assume it is going to be around level 45, but this is not confirmed. This is just an assumption.
That when he tried the World Tier 3 capstone dungeon to progress to World Tier 4, the experience was a whole lot smoother, and that dungeon was level 75, and the character he was playing...
Yo, Raptor, my brother, how are you doing, brother? How are you, my dude?
...was also level 75, so it does seem that if you are of the equivalent level, the capstone dungeon should be a lot easier. However, even...
I am great, bro. I am great. We are back again, my dude.
And being of the same level, he said that the boss fight was still quite difficult. He had to learn the mechanics and really pay attention to avoid taking significant damage. It was enough of a challenge. Going through these capstone dungeons were enough of a challenge that he would suggest that hardcore players actually try it on softcore first. Of course, as you and I both know, people who play it hardcore are lunatics. I say that in the most endearing way possible. They ain't gonna try softcore first. They're gonna be going as soon as the game launches, even with the servers dying constantly. These people.
Nah, bro, I want to play hardcore because it is more fun, in my opinion. And people will say, brother, dying and starting again is not fun. But the highest stakes of the gameplay, like knowing that that something crazy can happen at any moment, is like a high adrenaline environment. So yes, I wanna play hardcore. But why the fuck would I play hardcore at my first try when I will probably die to something that I don't know it is going to happen? So some boss does some crazy mechanic that can kill you, and I don't know how it works, and then it kills me, and I have to start over again just to try that again. No, fuck that. I am going to play softcore. I am going to learn everything about the game, and then when the season comes, the first season, because remember that when the game launches, there is not going to be the season. The game will launch just so you try the game, you go through the campaign, you learn how the game goes, and then later, at an unknown day that we don't know, they will release the first season, and then I can try hardcore because I already know the boss's mechanics and whatever.
We're going to be in there playing hardcore. But yeah, the main point was capstone dungeons are meant to present a real challenge. They are the blockade as you move up the world tiers. So after completing the first capstone dungeon and you progress from world tiers 2 to world tier 3, which is nightmare difficulty, that is when more of the endgame activities open up. And he talked a bit about the nightmare dungeons and the Helltides. So starting with nightmare dungeons, we of course know that these are the hard mode version of dungeons. This is like one of the main endgame activities. They require nightmare sigils that will boost the dungeon level, while also adding affixes for both the monsters and the dungeon itself. Now, Riker didn't.
You may have heard this comparison a lot of times, but it is because it's true. This is just Mythic Plus from WoW. But it can be fine. If the system works, what is the problem? Let's do it, you know.
And actually expand upon this in the video, but we did see from the screenshot that he showcased a few examples.
The beta open up on the 12th, Raptor, like in 2 weeks, right? Because we are now at 3. So next weekend, this weekend not, the next weekend, we will have the beta from Friday through Monday, brother, because Monday morning the game will still be available. So we will go hard that weekend. I am going to stream, of course, as long as I can, just playing the game and going hard, brother, because I want to play that shit. And since I already went through the beta in the last beta of stream, I already know what is going on, and I can just full stream it now, you know. No worries. So we will do it for sure. And I suggest you install the game because it is free, and you give it a try, so as you will know if you like it or you don't like it without having to buy the game, you know.
Examples of what these types of modifications can be. So for example, for monster affixes, we saw stuff like the monsters can be enhanced with various types of elemental damage. They can have their attack speed increased. They can have their...
This is a Blizzard game. Blizzard games are always available in Mac, bro. Always available in Mac.
Resistance is increased, or they can gain the unstoppable buff, making them immune to crowd control. But then we also saw some of the names of the dungeon affixes. So one that we saw was called Nightmare Portal. This looks to be the portals that were described in a previous endgame video from Blizzard that will just periodically appear as you're going through a nightmare dungeon, summoning in new monsters from other locations in the world. We also saw affixes for something called Stormbane's Wrath. Now, through some leaks, we did learn that there was a nightmare dungeon affix where lightning strikes would periodically come down that could potentially one-shot you. That could be what the Stormbane's Wrath one is referring to. And there was also an affix for Blood Blister, and I'm just going to make a guess here that this is something like random explosions of blood appear on the ground that you have to avoid. I don't know, maybe something like this. But it is really cool to see that the nightmare dungeons are not just enhancing the monsters, but also adding...
There is something that happens in WoW that I hope doesn't happen in Diablo. For example, there are sometimes in WoW, in Mythic Plus, you have affixes, or what in Diablo 4 is going to be called afflictions. And those affixes do some stuff during the dungeon. But sometimes what it does is that you have to move out of something in the ground, you know. But there you face a boss that you have to stand specifically at one point in the ground to not, for some stupid mechanic the boss has. And then there is an overlap. The boss makes you stand at one point, but then the dungeon mechanic spawns in there, and then you have to move out, and then you don't have anywhere to go. This happens in WoW a lot with a lot of different affixes, brother. I hope this stupid shit doesn't happen in Diablo 4, because at that point you are just fucked. There is nothing you can do. The game is just screwing you, you know. I hope that doesn't happen with these afflictions, bro.
An additional mechanic layer on top of the dungeon experience. I love to see it. So the Nightmare dungeons come with, as well, limited numbers of revives, and if you die too many times, you will then fail the dungeon, basically just losing your key and missing out on it.
Of course, that doesn't apply to hardcore players. You only have one life forever, but for softcore players, it is a cap that you have to overcome in there, and that is cool.
Any rewards at the end. So it does seem like as you move higher up these sigil tiers, they allow fewer revives, and these do appear to be tied to the world tiers as well. And I'll tell you, as soon as you get to being limited to just 4 revives, that's really gonna make people need to pay attention. Now, they did something basically similar to this in function in Diablo 3, where whenever you died, it would put you further and further behind the timer as you're trying to fill up the bar before the timer expires, so that you can get those bonus enhancements to your gems. They're doing something like this, but actually just having a hard fail state from it. Or at least I'm assuming it's a hard fail state. Maybe that's not the case. I actually don't know if we've got clarification if the revive limitations are referring to bonuses that you can get if you go within those limits, or
I hope it is just a hard fail, bro. I hope it is just a hard fail.
Or if it's just going to kick you out of the dungeon after you reach it. I'm assuming the former, but I'm actually not certain at the moment. But either way, there are revive restrictions that are going to have some consequence tied to them. So from his experience, it looks like early on we will be getting Nightmare Sigils, which are like the keys to activate the Nightmare dungeons, specifically from the Tree of Whispers, which is like the game's bounty system or quest system. You're also able...
Which, by the way, I believe the Tree of Whispers is cool. Not the mechanic, because I don't know how the mechanic is going to work until we play the game. I mean the concept of just a bunch of heads hanging out from a tree, and they give you missions. And the tree is called the Tree of Whispers. That concept, that theme is just fucking awesome, bro. And Diablo is full of those type of things.
Well, the craft sigils, these are random, but basically after breaking sigils down, you're rewarded sigil powder, and then with that powder, you can craft different difficulty tiers, and it's going to give you a random dungeon sigil. You don't know exactly which one you're going to get, but you will get one within a range. Now, one interesting note that Riker mentioned here is that of the 100+ dungeons that are going to be in the game at release, apparently only 30 of them will be eligible for the Nightmare variations with every...
Yes, a rotation of dungeons. Also, that happens in Mythic Plus. They give you a rotation of the dungeons
season. So in the first season, which is scheduled sometime shortly after launch, we're going to have 30 dungeons that can be upgraded to Nightmare variants, and then 90...
I am cool with rotations as long as the selection of dungeons is varied enough, you know? Like, let's be honest, 30 dungeons are a lot of dungeons, brother. Those are a lot of dungeons. But... and you have 120, 110, I don't know, dungeons from where to pull from. So you are cool. Just make a good selection of the 30 that are going to be on the rotation, bro. Like, they are varied in how you complete them, in a scenario, in mechanics, in everything of the matter, you know.
Plus or something like that, it can't be, and they'll just always be normal dungeons. And then come season 2, there will be a new list of 30 potential Nightmare variants of the total 100+ dungeons in the game. Now, I gotta say, I am really surprised by this, and I'm a bit baffled as to why exactly they're choosing to have a restriction and a limit of which dungeons can have Nightmare dungeons in each season. My first thought was...
I believe it is easier to balance. I imagine it is easier to balance 30 dungeons than 120 dungeons. It would be my first guess, but maybe there is another reason, you know.
Maybe they're doing this to prevent people from running the same most efficient dungeon over and over again. But then I realized that can't be the reason, because we can't just handpick which dungeon we're doing a Nightmare variant of, because we rely on whatever Nightmare sigils we get, and which ones we get are completely random. So it's a bit confusing as to why...
No, but I believe you can destroy... There is a system where you can destroy your Nightmare sigils to get the one you want in the occultists, with the occultists in town. So maybe that is not the reason, you know. And you could either way just... it doesn't that can be the reason, because it doesn't matter if the pool is 120, 100 or 20 or 30 dungeons, because if you want to choose the most efficient one, you will just do it out of any pool of dungeons, you know. If there are just 2 dungeons, you are going to do the one that is most efficient. That is what people do, you know. So but I am not sure about the occultist thing. I know that you can destroy your Nightmare sigils to get another one with the occultist, but I don't know if you can hand pick the one you get back. Maybe he gives you a random one, you know. So I don't know
why exactly they're choosing to do it this way. I'm not sure what their justification is for wanting to limit. They're just basically taking the pool of potential variation.
Yo, Benjamin, my brother, how you doing, bro? How you doing, my dude?
And of the endgame in a season, and cutting it by like a third, at least when it comes to the Nightmare dungeons in particular. There are, of course, other endgame activities that we will be doing as well, but I'm a bit confused, and I'd be interested to hear what their like philosophy is behind doing that restriction. It seems odd to me. It seems not good, frankly. At least that's my gut reaction. Okay, so next up...
Maybe I have heard that people that play Diablo has this have this reaction. But since I come from WoW and Mythic Plus has a rotation, I am cool with rotation. So it is like a matter of perspective of the player, right? And again, I have to think that it is because of balance. Like handling 3 dungeons is easier than handling 120 dungeons.
There are Helltides. As we know, Helltides will take a part of a zone and completely take it over, buffing the monsters within that region, adding new types of monsters, raining down fire, and then also providing a unique resource to farm for. Specifically, as we kill enemies within the Helltides, we are rewarded with cinders, and then those cinders can be cashed in at Helltide chest. And this is a great way to farm for specific pieces of gear, specific gear slots, because every Helltide chest will clearly show you exactly what type of gear is inside of it. So you can see if it's a helm, if it's a sword, if it's pants, whatever. Also in the Helltides will be...
That is cool to know if you are farming a unique, you know, like you know that the unique you are targeting is on the head slot, so you target the head chest until you get the unique you are looking for. That is great, brother. That is cool because we don't want full RNG, but also we don't want full determination, you know. We want something in the middle, so we want a way of targeting the piece that you want, you know. And there are builds that revolve around a specific unique, and if you don't get this unique, you can't get this build. So we want to be able to target the unique, you know. Real damn good. Just got a second race plus promotion. Oh, that is great, brother. Congratulations, my dude. That is fucking awesome. Haven't even been here 90 days yet. Looking forward to trying Diablo 4. Pre-order it the other night. Oh, brother, that is fucking cool. I love that people are hyped about Diablo 4 with me, and that people that have been following me for a snap are willing to say, you know what, let's play Diablo 4, bro. That is cool and awesome for me, brother. Yo, Celote, my dude, brother. How you doing, my dude? Don't worry about it, brother. Don't worry about it. English is not even my my native language. I would have more mistakes than you there for sure.
Roaming bosses. We've seen some examples of this in various videos that have released, as well as what he called a unique boss that has its own unique chest. This is kind of like a spoiler territory. It's meant to be like a really, really difficult challenge, but if you can overcome it, apparently we'll have some awesome rewards. There are also...
And of course, everybody will try to beat that boss, brother. Like, everybody will go into the Helltide just looking for that chest, looking for that boss, and that will be the strategy. Unless it is like really hard to do it and the rewards are not that great and it is more efficient to do the other chests. That will be the other way. But if that boss gives really good rewards, people will just go for that, you know, like the most efficient thing. Because you have to understand that when people metagame, there is no, oh, this is too difficult. People are going to metagame to kill this boss with 2 abilities, you know. So you have to be aware of that. The only way this doesn't become the most efficient thing is like it takes a long time to kill the boss, and then the reward is not as good, and you are just better off farming the other chests.
There's going to be public events that are unique to the Helltides. These are varied from the typical events that were in that zone prior to the Helltide. And then one big thing that he confirmed, we heard about this from leaks from the Endgame beta, but now we have like an official announcement of it, is the Helltides are going to be rotating 1 hour on, 1 hour off. We did learn, I should mention, that at any given time...
that to me is stupid. Maybe people are cool with that, and yes, it is not a big deal, it is not game breaking, but why isn't this just permanent but rotating the zones where the Helltide is happening? So if you get off work, let's say at 6 p.m. afternoon, you know, at 6 p.m., and you get home and you just have 1 hour to play until 7 p.m. because you are going to dinner somewhere, and in that hour there is no Helltide, well, you are fucked. You have to do something else, right? So I don't know. That seems odd to me. Why wouldn't you just give me Helltide every time and just rotate the zone out? Maybe there is some technical limitation, but I don't feel that is the case. This has to be a design philosophy choice, you know.
There will be 2 zones within all of the zones in the world that will have a Helltide taking place in them when it is toggled on. So you'll have, say, from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., there will be Helltides. 2 areas will have Helltides in them. And then from 8 to 9, no Helltides. And then from 9 to 10, Helltides are back into new areas. Now, this time gating is pretty common in online live service games. It's also what they're doing with the world bosses as well as the zone-wide, zone public events. All of this stuff is on a predetermined schedule. Now, odds are there will be websites, third-party sites out there that track the timers for this stuff, because in-game, you're only given a heads up just prior to the event happening. Now, design-wise, I assume their reason behind doing this is to stop people from farming these particular activities non-stop, so that people can't just farm the world boss over and over, or farm Helltides, or farm the zone events. It does really suck for people with limited playtime. Like, if you're one of those people who can only...
What I said earlier, exactly what I said earlier, brother.
manage to hop in for 30 minutes or an hour at a time, and you just happen to be playing when the world boss isn't active, when the Helltide isn't active, and those are things you want to do, that really sucks. I do think one possible remedy for this would be for them to have the bosses, the Helltides, and the public events constantly up, but balance out the rewards that you get across activities, or just limit them so that you can't get the big rewards from each of these things but once every hour, whether it's a particular resource, a particular piece of gear, a particular consumable, whatever it is, they're trying to limit players from amassing quickly by farm.
This is a good approach he's having here. Like, you can do it all the times you want, but the rewards are just once every hour, you know, or once every 2 hours. And in the case of the world boss, once every 3 hours or 6 hours, or however how many times the world boss spawns, that I don't really know. So that way people can kill it whenever they can, and they don't have to worry about people farming the boss because there is a restriction, you know. That is cool. That is a better solution than just having rotating out.
Farming things over and over again, they can put those restrictions on without completely eliminating those events, and this will make it so that people who only have 30-minute windows can still do those things when they have those 30 minutes, but then the people who are playing 12 hours a day, no lifing the game, they will be paced out, and they can't just routinely farm over and over and over again. I think that's a potential solution. If that
is better. That is an objectively better system, brother. That is an objectively better system, for sure.
Is the particular reason behind what they're doing here. The Paragon board, I was actually really excited to hear him talk about this. So he was talking about the fact that each board has a legendary node, which we knew that. Each particular board is basically built around that node, and that the nodes themselves are essentially better versions of legendary aspects with a lot of different supporting nodes to play into that. This is basically just like getting another piece of gear, but then offering some customization within the path that you take and which particular powers you take. And then you add the glyph system on top of that, where you're going to be putting these glyphs in, and then there's going to be a radius depending on the strength of the glyph, the rarity of the glyph, that even further boosts you up. Just the Paragon board system sounds a lot more interesting now after he described how it works and kind of how it functions towards player progression.
Yes,
just a couple other notes here from the video that I wanted to touch on.
The Paragon board seems cool. I have seen some abilities, some keystones that are on the Paragon board, and it looks cool, brother. And the glyphs give another window of how do you say this, customization. If you are asking how do you know this, is because these things have been data mined, and there are some websites that give this information out, the Paragon boards and the glyphs.
At one point mentioned that Blizzard told him there was no best experience farming activity. Like when it comes to all the things you can do in Endgame, everything is going to reward equal experience. Of course, as we know, that is never the case. The player base will find which activity gives the best experience per hour, even if it is just like 5 to 10% better than anything else. And that will be then considered the ideal method of experience farming, just like in Diablo 3.
I'll be honest, brother. For 5% or 10% extra experience, I prefer to just do whatever is most fun and not what is most efficient but is boring. Now, if what is most efficient is also the most fun thing, welcome it, brother. Nice.
You had like the chest farming, trying to get the bonus chest, and the massacre bonus runs that you would do. There will be something that's, even if it's just slightly better than everything else, that players will figure out. We're going to find the efficiency because that's what we do. So that is a bit of a recap as well as expanding upon certain things, although I do suggest checking out Riker's video if you want to hear it straight from the source. Oddly enough, though, he didn't really touch on a few major endgame systems. Like, he didn't talk at all about world boss farming. Maybe they didn't want him to spoil the world bosses in the other zones. Who knows? He didn't touch on Fields of Hatred at all, and he barely talked about Tree of Whispers other than to say that's how you get...
That, by the way, Fields of Hatred is the PvP zone, and that is... interesting to me. I want a PvP. I want a PvP hard. In fact, if there is no system, I am hoping there is a system where you can respec for PvP, right? You enter on the PvP zone and they let you respec. But if you can't do that because they have established that respecting the Paragon boards and your skills and whatever costs gold, and making a full respect can cost millions of gold. So you won't be able to just respec in and out of the PvP zone, brother, because that is stupid. Unless you just take days at a time. So what I will probably do, if there is no way of speccing specifically for the PvP when you enter to the Fields of Hatred, I will probably just create two characters, or two druids, one for PvE and one for PvP. Because I want to have a character specifically built for PvP. Every skill, every node, every Paragon board, every piece of gear that I equip is designed to kill people in PvP, brother. I want to do that. But I also want to experience the PvE, so I will probably have a character for that too, brother. And why do you say this? Because the majority of people will be too lazy to create a PvP character, and they will go into the Fields of Hatred with their PvE build, and I am going to destroy them, brother. That is what is going to happen.
get your first nightmare sigils, although I guess there's really not much.
Unless making a full respect is not that big of a deal and you say, well, I can go full PvP for the next 2-3 days and it is worth it to just respect, and that way you don't need to level a second character, that way I only need one character. Nice. We will have to wait and see, but if I can just do this easily, I will have to create a second character.
Much to say about Tree of Whispers because it is just a bounty quest system, but I wanted to hear more about world bosses, and I definitely wanted to hear about the PvP, the Fields of Hatred, so I am hopeful that he makes a follow-up video talking and diving into some of the stuff as well, so long as Blizzard isn't preventing him from doing so, or maybe the build that he played didn't have those things, or he just didn't spend his time focused on those things, who knows. Anyways, let's move on to the next story. But first, a word from today's sponsor, Ridge Wallets. By now, you most certainly know them. They've been sponsoring our videos for quite some time here on the channel.
Play out because we are watching the dude's video. It is as common to just skip the sponsor.
Keeping your pockets light, you got a slim profile, carry around what you need. It's a nice and simple proposition. Ridge wallets are made out of durable materials and come with a lifetime warranty as well as a 45-day risk-free trial. They can hold up to 12 cards plus have room for cash on the back thanks to this little handy strap. It's made out of RFID blocking tech to protect you from digital pickpocketers.
Soon, brother, soon. Let's hope. Let's have faith.
My personal favorites include things like carbon fiber and gunmetal. If you haven't already and you're interested in checking out Ridge, go ahead and use my link in the description below or head on over to ridge.com/force. Using code FORCE at any time will get you a 10% discount on any purchase. In an interview with WCCF Tech, lead class designer of Diablo IV, Adam Jackson, waded into the respec cost debate discussing Blizzard's current philosophy.
Well, we were just talking about respect cost, so let's see what they say in here.
Philosophy on this particular issue. He said, our vision for respec is that we have to balance this idea that we want players to commit to a fantasy and a character and have actual weight and meaning to their choices, but we also want them to feel free to customize their character and explore and try different builds and fantasies and ways to play. Where we've landed on that is that earlier in the game, it is very cheap, basically to the point that it's essentially free to respec your character and change around your build and experiment what you do. And then when you get to the really late game, we do want you to start to optimize and focus on a build and focus on a real fantasy so that you have that identity of I am a werewolf druid or I am a bloodcasting magic necro. They keep talking about this fantasy stuff, and I just gotta tell you, I just really couldn't care less. I'm not interested in the fantasy of my spec and my build. I'm more into the fantasy of my class, and my class has all of these different possibilities, and I really would just love to have reasonable access.
I understand what he's saying, and I kinda of agree for the majority of people, but I understand what Blizzard is saying because I am like that, brother. I like I like the fantasy of my specialization. For example, in WoW, you have 3 specializations for each class, and when you choose one, that is an extra step on the fantasy of your class. And brother, I want to feel that in Diablo 2, like I am a werewolf, I am a werewolf, I am a tornado casting dude, you know, I throw lightning on people, I create earthquakes. Like creating a fantasy there is cool, you know. And there will be hybrid builds, and then your fantasy is the hybrid build. But just not having anything, I am just a dude that does whatever, to me it doesn't feel good. But I understand that this is subjective. I understand that they are making a system for a lot of people. So a lot of people will probably want the respect, and even me, I was just talking about being able to respect for PvP, but that is like a functional challenge, not a thematic challenge that they could solve, you know. Of course, it is easy to just let people respect, brother. What is the easiest solution for everything? So everybody is happy. If you want your fantasy, have your fantasy. You don't have to respect. Nobody is making you respect, so you can do that. And then people that want to respect can respect, and people that want to PvP and PvE can respect. If you don't want people to respect on the fly, make it that you can only respect on town. Give it a 1 hour cooldown, you know, and that's it. Everything is fine. Everything is Gucci. Everything is happy. Everyone is happy, sorry.
All those possibilities and not be restricted because they want me to have a build fantasy that, you know, let's be honest here, a build fantasy that's just tied to whichever gear that I happen to get dropped. And then when I get a new piece of gear drop, oh, I've got a new fantasy now, and now I want to go towards that fantasy, so I gotta farm for however many hours. Although I don't want to lean into that too hard right now because we don't know how many hours, and that's something that really isn't likely to be settled until release. A couple other quotes here. Last bit was, he said, as far as the idea of making everything free forever, I don't think that we're going to be going down that direction anytime soon, but this is a live service game, and we are going to continue to listen to feedback from the community, and honestly, our goal over time is to make the best game possible, so whatever we feel best, players, yada yada yada. When it comes to the respec stuff, I think too expensive is just generally bad. I feel like they need to make sure they don't make it so prohibitive that someone feels the pressure to re-roll a character just because they find a new item that makes them want to try out a new build. Because honestly, who's got time for that? Come on, let's be honest. Well, maybe we do. We're RPG players after all, and MMO players after all, so we got plenty of time to game. And beyond the excuse of class fantasy, I assume one of the big reasons why they want to put limitations on respecing, and I think this is understandable, is to stop people from constantly changing specs for various activities. So that like they got a spec for nightmare dungeons, and then they got a spec for world bosses, and then they got a spec for PvP, and every time they go between focusing on those, they feel the desire to change up their spec completely, which, as we know, will take a bunch of time, unless of course they do templates, and maybe that is an answer as well. If they want to keep these restrictions where we're not constantly swapping things around, it would be great if they had like loadouts, right? So give us like 2 loadouts. Maybe I can have a PvP loadout and a PvE loadout, because I don't want to have to roll another class, especially.
What I said earlier, brother, I don't want to have to reroll or create. Well, I will have to do it if it is the case, but I don't want to have to level 2 druids because I want to have one for PvE and one for PvP. Let me create a build for PvP in the same druid, but maybe it won't be possible because, as I said, in this case I have to farm the items. All right, you can do that. You can stash the PvP items and everything is good. I have to reset the skill tree. Okay, the skill tree is not that expensive. It is all cool. But then I have to reset the Paragon board, and that is expensive. They have said that it can cost millions of gold, brother. And that is a problem, I do, because I want to optimize the character for PvP.
As we know how long it's supposed to take, how many hundreds of hours it's supposed to take for those classes to eventually reach max level and max out their Paragon board, and it's a big time investment. And at least I know personally, I will probably be sticking to one class this season and just focusing on progressing them as far as possible. And something else I do want to add here and to consider is that one of the unintended consequences, I feel like, of having these overly restrictive respecs is that it puts pressure on players, and at least some portion of the players, to really not mess things up, or in other words, just to copy meta builds. You have a bad build, and then because
Exactly. People, instead of trying to have fun and have the build that they wanna do, like, oh brother, I wanna go into this fantasy, like it is ironic that they are going for this thing because they want people to have a fantasy, but this can result in the contrary, that people don't pursue their fantasy because you are punishing them, you know. For example, I wanna go with the fantasy of being a hitting werewolf. I don't wanna poison bullshit. I don't wanna shape-shift into other form. I just want to be a werewolf that hits stuff with his claws. And then you start to build your stuff, and then you realize you fucked up somewhere along the way, and that feels awful. So to solve the problem, what is people going to do? Well, you go look for a build in YouTube or in a web page, whatever, and then you follow the guide, and then there is no customization in the game because you are restricting people from just trying out the stuff. That is a problem that can arise, brother. And then people will complain that the game is just, there is no enough customization, the meta game is stale, everybody's doing the same stuff, you are not encouraged to try your own build, blah, blah, blah.
As you have that bad build, you're punished because it's going to take longer to get the gold that you need to respec out of that bad build, right? And I feel like that's a process that, at least for some players, especially players who are limited on time, will only go through once or twice before they just end up going online and copying builds from various sites. And, you know, I know there's a whole portion of the player base out there who say, I would never copy a build, and that's just, you're not really playing the game. I like playing the game because I like physically playing the game. The part of the game that I don't care so much about is spending hours trial and erroring things and trying different things to see if they work. And then if they don't work, going back and spending hours trying different things to see if they work. I'd rather just have someone else who spent those 10, 20, 100 hours figuring out which build is ideal for whatever particular activity or for a well-rounded build or for whatever my goal.
This dude is a meta gamer, bro.
And use the time that they sent, like a vampire, sucking the time out of them and using it for my own benefit, and just get to play the game and do the part that I like, which is clicking and moving around and seeing the stuff. But not just, some people are into it, and I think that's great for those that are, but many people aren't, and they just want something that's going to make them feel like they are they have a competent build and they can do things.
But there is people that find that part fun, you know, like you say, oh, those people waste their time doing that. No, for those people, that is the fun part, you know, like figuring out those stuff and treating the game like a puzzle, and I have to figure out what does the most damage, and I can survive, and linking this ability with this item and whatever. That is fun, you know.
Things and not feel like they're hampered. They're like self-hamstringing themselves by trying something on their own and then being restricted. But again, I do need to emphasize that we have no idea how much gold it's going to end up costing or how long it'll take for the average player to accumulate just by playing normally. I just think it's a fun discussion to have around the design philosophy of respecing and the prohibitive nature of it, or not prohibitive. Where it's going to end up landing, we will not know until release. I know people are like dissecting the amount shown for respecs on various videos and streams, but there's a decent chance that this could or already has changed before that final 1.0 patch and launch. So we'll just have to see where it ends up settling. We got an update this week on hardcore PvP, and it's going to be hardcore. Hardcore mode, of course, refers to the variation of these games where if your character dies for whatever reason.
I know that I want to try hardcore on PvE, and I know that I want to create a character for PvP, as we already discussed. I don't know yet if I want to create a hardcore PvP character, because as you are listening here, if you die in PvP as a hardcore player, you die. And you know that at some point you are going to die, brother. This is rough. But I believe you can go into the fields of hatred at low levels, you know, like before level 50. And at that point, yes, why not? Let's try it. You have not sunken a lot of hours into this character. You can afford to lose it, you know. So probably after I do other stuff, I can try it, but I don't know. This is like the hardest stuff, brother. Hardcore PvP, that is hardcore, my dude. Because a mistake, a little mistake, a lock, a lucky, how do you say this? A lucky hit, whatever can change the outcome and you lose your character. Fuck that, bro.
Reason, it's done. It is dead for good, deleted, see you later, out of there. Now, Blizzard has confirmed.
Yes, exactly. That is what is going to happen. I am going to wait the PvE Druid softcore. We are going to learn the game. We are going to know how everything works, and then we are going to branch out into other stuff.
Confirmed that this will apply to the game's PvP as well. So if you go into Fields of Hatred with a hardcore character, your character dies in that PvP arena to another player, it's dead because you're playing hardcore. Maybe it doesn't seem like a surprise, but there was some consideration that maybe they would make it so that you could freely PvP, and then the hardcore element would only be attached to PvE. And there was also precedence for this thought, because a few years back in an interview with Mr. Llama SC, Blizzard did state that PvP deaths in hardcore would not result in permanent death. Clearly, that has changed. In general, I'm okay with this, at least in theory, because it's hardcore. Hardcore players are there for the hardcore experience, but I do think in practicality, the concern here is that what it ends up just meaning is very few people ever step into Fields of Hatred in hardcore, not just because they could die by getting player killed by someone else, but then you've got things like server issues and glitches and hackers, which, let's be honest, there are hackers in just about every major game. There are going to be hackers in Diablo 4. It's almost, there will be hackers. Dying to that would be abysmal, and it just seems like the risk will far outweigh the reward because of that, especially as players have more and more time invested into their hardcore character.
But what has to be done is that hardcore PvP characters only face hardcore PvP characters. Don't make me face as a hardcore PvPer someone that is playing softcore, because they don't have the same risk as me and can make ballsier plays. I believe that once you go hardcore, they take the character to a hardcore realm, and everybody playing there is hardcore. So maybe this is already done, but I am saying this just in case, I think early on, it's not so much of a big deal. In fact, to that point, I would love like low-level hardcore PvP. That sounds amazing to me. I do wonder if Blizzard could do something like bucket players into certain level ranges. So maybe they make it so that they could do like level ranges of 10 as you're working your way up to max level, and they could just bucket players together. So players from 10 to 19 will all play and only show up in their particular instances in the Fields of Hatred, and then players 20 to 29, 30 to 39, etc., etc. Sort of like how World of Warcraft does their battlegrounds. That would stop people from dealing with high-level characters, over-geared characters, people just way more powerful than them. Now, it's not going to address the concern of glitches, bugs, and hackers killing them in PvP. You know, it is hardcore, so the whole point is high stakes, but I think that balance could... But at that point, if you die at level 19, you don't care because you get to there in 1 hour, you know, so who cares? Be really fun. I know I would do it. Like, I would totally love, like, a level 19 twink PvP hardcore battles. Like, I think that would be a lot of fun. I really do, and that's something that I would personally engage with. But if I'm playing hardcore and I have 100 hours in my character, I ain't stepping in the Fields of Hatred. There's just way too much that could go wrong besides me just getting owned because someone's better than me. There's just too many other potential issues that would just be infuriating beyond belief. I think another middle ground, too, something that Liam and I were talking about, was what if they just made it so that a hardcore death moves your character into softcore? I think that's a potential answer. It seems like that could be a reasonable solution. That is what happens in Path of Exile, just hardcore in general. Like Path of Exile, hardcore means that if you die, the character gets moved from the hardcore league to the softcore league. That is what's happened. For people who want to try hardcore PvP. Yo, Cyril, my brother, how you doing, dude? VP, but not just have their character deleted. Campaign. So we got confirmation that the campaign will be roughly 35 hours in total, probably closer to 30 to 25 if you're skipping all the... That is cool. That is a good campaign, brother, because you have games like the Jedi Survivor thing that just came out that in 15 hours you complete the game, you know? So having a 30-hour, 35 hours campaign is really cool, and you still... The game has a lot to offer after that, brother. Cutscenes like this weirdo here, and that's going to put you around level 45 to 50, as we touched on with Riker. His character finished the campaign at level 45, and then he did the level 50 capstone dungeon. But they did also say that reaching the max character level of 100 is supposedly going to be taking around 150 hours, so quite a significant amount of time, and probably something that not most people are going to get within every... But don't get discouraged by that, guys. How I said earlier, it doesn't getting to 100 doesn't matter. You are already playing the end game since you completed the campaign at level 40, level 45. You are already doing whatever you have to do. So in Diablo 4 or in Diablo games, the goal is not getting to, well, in Diablo 4 more, the goal is not getting to 100, but just to farm and make your build, you know. So don't get discouraged by that. You can just play the game without having that goal in mind. Of course, if you wanna go hard and get to 100, you can do that, of course.
Every season. It seems like that level 100 character level is going to be like, that's a big milestone to hit. 150 hours, it is over the course of 3 months. That's still a lot of hours. That's a lot of hours to have to sink in every day and every week. For most people who don't just game for a living or who just don't do anything but game and don't do much else in their free time. So, but it is kind of cool here. We'll have to see if that 150 hour mark is a true estimate or if the various farming methods, the XP farming that the player base will certainly find cuts that in half potentially. I mean, honestly, if I know gamers, and I do, you know, I've been one my whole life, when the developer says something takes 150 hours, they're talking about like developer pace, right? They're talking about like casual player pace. When the hardcore...
Exactly. That is something we already have to say. Like when they say, no, we have the Pinnacle Boss that is really hard to beat. It is really hard to beat. They are talking in an average player sense, you know. They know that the vast majority of players that are going to play the game are casual players, maybe console players, whatever, and they are targeting that audience when they say these things. So they say, oh, it is going to take you 150 hours to the average player, maybe. So there is some metagamer, insane nerd dude that just go hard without breathing, and he makes it in half the time, you know. And the same goes for the boss. They say, oh, it's incredibly hard, but it's incredibly hard for the average player. Then comes a dude that figures out a build and goes hard and learns everything and two-shots the boss, you know. That can happen. I hope not, but that can happen.
Dudes, step in 50, 60 hours. I'm just throwing out random guesses here. Who knows? But man, you could just find just the most egregious like XP farming exploits. We will. Don't you worry. We will. It's worth noting as well too. That doesn't mean 150 hours till endgame. You start endgame as soon as you finish the campaign. Basically, it's just the max character level is said to take around 150 hours. There was some confusion this past week about when mounts unlock. Initially, there were sites reporting that this happened after completing the campaign. That is not the case. It has been cleared up. That we're actually going to unlock mounts fairly early on. It seems like somewhere around Act 2 after completing a specific quest line. So we're going to have mounts pretty early on in the process, which love to see it, especially in this big open world. A couple other things. There were some official Blizzard videos, like they had the inside the game, your class, your way video. This was a super basic overview of class customization. They talked about like builds and progression. Nothing really significant here, with the exception of around the 3-minute mark, specifically at 2:54 in the video. We saw a little glimpse of skip campaign. It has been confirmed that this is a feature. After you complete the campaign the first time, you will unlock the ability to skip it on any future character. And I do believe it was also confirmed that this will apply to seasons as well. So leading up to the first season, you finish the campaign. Then once you go into the season number 1, you don't have to play through the story campaign again, and you'll just basically be leveling in D4's version of adventure mode, where you'll go out and you'll do whatever activities you want for resources, for fast experience farming, for whatever, just whatever you feel like doing, basically.
But again, what people will do is they will figure out what gives me better XP, because if the campaign gives you better XP, people are going to do the campaign every time. But if going adventure mode or skipping the campaign gives you better XP, then people will do that, you know. People will do whatever gives them more XP, brother.
They also just today released a gameplay guide focused on monsters, world bosses, and mounts. In it, we saw them cover the various monster families. That's just like the type of enemies. They also touched on the elite affixes, which was kind of cool, breaking down cold, fire, lightning, poison, shadow, and utility. They talked about the special monsters, which are the rare spawns. They also briefly touched on world bosses, real basic stuff, just talking about how it's new to the Diablo franchise. The camera zooms back. They got health bar breakpoints for various phases and the stagger bar. They talked about the treasure goblin. It was real simple, like most of these like PR marketed official Diablo videos are. Riker's video was the far more interesting video that came out this week. They also released a couple new class trailers, which was pretty basic stuff as well. And then the final big thing, of course, that's happened over the course this past week is we learned that there's gonna be another beta taking place. They're calling this the server slam beta, so expect things to not function properly. It's gonna be.
I am so hyped about that shit, brother. I know that probably on Friday we are gonna turn on the stream on Friday. But I know that probably that day will be really hard to play because it is a server slam. Things will be hectic and they will kick us out. We will be in a queue, whatever. We will be pissed off. But who cares? But Saturday maybe things get better. But I am so hyped about that beta, brother, because I can't stop thinking about this fucking game, brother. It is ruining my life. I can't enjoy another game, bro. And I can only count the days till this shit comes out. So knowing that, oh, brother, in just 10 days, I am going to be playing Diablo 4. It is cool. And yes, they will take it away from me. But then I only have to wait 2 weeks more. You know, it is better, brother.
Running from May the 12th to the 14th, we're going to have all 5 classes available. They changed it from a level 25 cap to level 20, which seems...
Yo, Waldo, brother. Thanks, my dude. Thanks, bro. Yes, I am excited, dude.
And it's going to have all the other same content as the last beta. We're playing through Fractured Peaks. They're going to have the Ashava world boss, although thankfully he will be spawning much more frequently than he did in the last test. And there's going to be a new cosmetic reward for defeating Ashava at level 20. So even if you played the last beta, there is a new reward. So if you want to get that, be sure to hop in and check it out. And that pretty much does it. That is a recap of most of the major news that we had come out over the past like 7 days or so. I'll probably keep on doing this here on the main channel, and we have covered some of the other updates that have happened over the past few weeks. I know there hasn't been much D4 discussion here on this channel. Check out our other channel if you're interested in getting some of the more nitty-gritty stuff there. But going forward, I will still be doing a lot more D4 here as well, so stay tuned for that. But that does it for this video. Thank you as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.
I did enjoy it, brother. I did enjoy it. A lot of cool stuff. Thank you very much for the video. Force Gaming, people. Really, really cool stuff to be updated about everything that is happening with Diablo 4.